Tonight on KQED Newsroom, we dive into a chain reaction. As Congressmember Barbara Lee vies to become the next senator from California, Oakland's Lateefah Simon announces her bid to fill Lee's spot in Congress. We speak with them both about what they want to achieve in higher office. And the vibrant colors and celebratory images of the Women's Building mural are this week's look at something beautiful. Coming to you from KQED headquarters in San Francisco this Friday, March 3rd, 2023. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Priya David Clemens. A game of political dominoes has begun. 30 years ago, Dianne Feinstein began her first term as a United States Senator. She went on to win 5 more elections, making her the longest-serving female senator. Last month, Senator Feinstein announced she would step down. Even before she declared her intent to leave office, 2 California members of Congress had announced they would run for her seat, Adam Schiff from Los Angeles and Katie Porter from Orange County. Recently, another contender announced that she would vie for the position, longtime progressive standard-bearer Congressmember Barbara Lee.
When there weren't protections for survivors of domestic violence, I wrote California's first Violence Against Women Act. When it was legal to discriminate against the LGBTQ plus community, I wrote the Hate Crimes Reduction Act and got a Republican governor to sign it into law. When no one wanted to talk about global AIDS funding, I got President George W. Bush to make it a priority. And for those who say my time has passed, well, when does making change go out of style?
Joining us now by Skype from Washington, D.C. is Congressmember Barbara Lee. Thank you so much for joining us.
Nice being with you tonight.
So you have had some landmark moments in your career. We just heard about some of them in that clip. There was also the time you were the lone vote against authorizing military action after 9/11. What is it that made you now decide to run for Senate?
Nice being with you. Let me say, first of all, there are so many issues that are not being addressed in the Senate as it relates to California. We have the issues of inequality that are just overwhelming. You're looking at over 20 million people living below the poverty line who are food insecure, who are unsheltered. You don't have anyone in the Senate talking about these individuals, these families, and these families are families that we have to fight for. These are families that I want to fight for in the Senate. When you look at the issues around unsheltered individuals, families living on the street, housing, affordable housing, I want to fight for affordable housing and for unsheltered populations in California. When you look at public safety, every community wants public safety, but you don't hear California's diverse population and what public safety really means for Californians. When you look at the climate crisis, young people are supporting me because they know I have been a champion for the climate crisis and for making sure that we not only address wildfires and all of the floods and all of the climate events in California, but also address the climate crisis as a climate crisis, use everything we can do to make sure we protect the planet, including fighting for environmental justice in many of our communities. California has some of the strongest and most productive and most effective climate laws. These laws from California need to be championed in the Senate for many for our states and for the federal government. So there are many reasons why I want to run for the Senate, but basically I want to fill the gap. I want to make sure that the 20 million people plus know that they have a fighter who's going to fight to make this economy work for them also.
So you do have an incredible legacy. I'm curious what you would like to do going forward. Should you get this seat, what would you want to accomplish in your first term in office as senator?
Sure. Well, I want to focus on inequality. And, you know, inequality has many, many legs. You look at the fact that the California economy is not working for everyone. You have to look at why. We have in California, unfortunately, over 20 million people living below the poverty line, food insecurity. When you look at public safety, every community wants public safety, but we've got to make sure we ensure that there is real public safety for each community. Climate crisis, that's a big deal in California. We've passed some of the strongest climate provisions ever in the whole country. But we need to take some of these provisions and take them to scale, to take them to Washington, D.C., and make sure that our national policies on climate reflect many of the very positive provisions that California has passed. This is a climate crisis. Housing, when you look at our unsheltered population, you don't hear anyone in the Senate debating issues around unsheltered people and housing. And you see what Karen Bass has done as mayor of Los Angeles. There are ways that you can address housing at the federal level that really will help make sure that people get off the streets, get safe and decent housing, and in the first place, stop being evicted so they can afford their rent, and make sure that they have pathways into jobs, job training, mental health, and ultimately a job. And so we have to have better strategies, and the federal government needs to take stock of how we can get these really challenges that many people face in California dealt with.
Representative, could you tell us about what you've accomplished for your district in the East Bay that should convince the rest of the state to make you their next senator?
Well, in the East Bay, first of all, of course, I'm focused on helping to lift people out of poverty. The child tax credit, I've delivered as a member of the Appropriations Committee millions of dollars for my district, for community-based organizations. I delivered billions of dollars, not only for my district, but for the entire state and the entire country. The COVID relief targeted to Black and brown communities were disproportionately dying and suffering from COVID. I've delivered resources for education for our port. You know, we have one of the largest ports in the country. It's an economic engine for our state. I've delivered resources for the Port of Oakland. When you look at all of the issues that we address in my own district as it relates to criminal justice reform, when you look at housing, I've delivered resources once again for housing. I think the important point is that I see people who generally are not being seen. When
it comes to who you are also known as someone who is generally anti-war. I think many of us actually are anti-war, right? Nobody really wants the violence. But you recently reintroduced a bill to cut $100 billion from the defense budget and reallocate the funds elsewhere. Tell us about that measure.
Absolutely. The defense budget is out of control. Taxpayers' dollars are being used for areas that don't even affect our national security. Let me give you an example. We're paying for research on missile systems that will never be used. You have $100 billion. That's a drop in the bucket. Our defense budget is over $858 billion. The budget that when we were in the majority that I chaired on appropriation was for development and diplomatic initiatives, humanitarian assistance, refugee assistance, food security. When you look at the balance in our national security strategy, development and diplomacy deserves an equal footing to prevent wars. Secondly, the resources, $100 billion. We can use $100 billion here in the United States for schools, for healthcare, for education, for climate, for all of the efforts that we know that will enhance the quality of life for everyone. As we reduce inflation, because it's disproportionately affecting poor and low-income and working families.
Another topic that you've taken on over the years has been women's health care. A federal judge in Texas seems likely to rule soon to restrict access to mifepristone, which is a widely used abortion pill. What do you expect would happen at that point?
Well, we're waiting to see what the decision says, but let me just say, about 50% of abortions are through medication abortion. This is really another effort of the Supreme Court and of states to try to turn back the clock, try to not allow people to make decisions over their own body. I've been working to try to repeal the Hyde Amendment, which has denied since the 1970s low-income women and women of color disproportionately to the full range of reproductive health care, including abortion care. So I have legislation to repeal the Hyde Amendment, the EACH Act. We have 180 co-sponsors, and we're building support to repeal that. So there are many issues that I've been championing as the member of the pro-choice caucus to make sure that after the Dobbs decision, the unfortunate Dobbs decision, that we go back, we support place it into law, codifying the Women's Health Protection Act. We've got to get that done, but we also have to make sure that that people throughout the country have access to abortion care. This is really a life or death issue. And this medication abortion court decision, again, we're waiting to see what the outcome is, but I led the letter to FDA to say it should be available over the counter at drugstores. And so I've been working on this for many, many years, and it's really very sad, but we're going to keep fighting.
One of the common experiences of being a black female politician is unfortunately that it is very difficult to raise money. You have spoken about this in the past. In this race, Congressmember Schiff starts out with about $21 million on hand. Congressmember Porter has about $7 million. And reportedly, you have about $52,000. How are you tackling this challenge? Because money matters still when it comes to elections.
Money matters in a very big way, especially in California. Secondly, there have always been challenges and barriers for people of color and women to run in races that are competitive and to raise the type of money that others can raise. We don't have that ability to do that because of the structural issues in the political system. Thirdly, we need to get the campaign finance reform and have public financing of campaigns, which I totally have supported and continue to support. Having said that, we're raising money, and we're going to raise enough money to run our campaign the way we're going to run our campaign and win.
Another obstacle that you're facing is that people say, hey, you know, that Barbara Lee, she's the oldest of the pack. She's 72. Schiff and Porter are both younger. What are your concerns about age with anyone serving in the Senate? You know, there have been concerns about Senator Dianne Feinstein at 89, the oldest serving U.S. senator. Do you think there should be an age limit when it comes to public service, particularly in the Senate?
I don't think there should be an age limit. Voters make decisions. You know, I think that in terms of our democracy, voters have a right to vote who they want to. They have a right to vote out people, elected officials who they think are not doing a good job. I have a wealth of experience. You know, right now with the MAGA extremist Republicans and with what is taking place in the Senate, you need somebody who's going to stand strong and fight against this and who's been a part of the resistance movement, been able to fight for democracy and fight for what is right all of her life, and who can deliver. So experience, quite frankly, matters a lot.
Representative Barbara Lee, running for Senate, thank you for your time.
Nice being with you, and thank you.
As Representative Lee announced her bid for Senate, Lateefah Simon announced her bid to fill Lee's seat in Congress this week. Simon has been politically active in the Bay Area for 2 decades and is recognized nationally as a civil rights leader. She's racked up an impressive list of endorsements already, including Assembly members Mia Bonta and Buffy Wicks and former Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf. When Simon was just 26 years old, she became the youngest woman to receive a MacArthur Genius Grant. She's also a director on the BART board and a California State University board trustee.
As a young mom, as a youth organizer, working with young women who were being trafficked in the underground street economy, as someone who myself had been in the juvenile justice system, I decided very early on that government wasn't working for folks with no voice. I'm Lateefah Simon, and I'm running for Congress.
Joining us now to discuss her run for Congress is Lateefah Simon. Lateefah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So as you step into this race for Congress, what do you most want people to know about you?
You know, that in the San Francisco Bay Area for 29 years, I've woke up in the morning and gone to sleep fighting for folks like me, folks like the people who live across the street from me, for young people who have not been served well by systems, for elders, for folks struggling for voice, and leading institutions from the Young Women's Freedom Center that's working with young women on the streets and young women in institutions, to running the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights for 5 years, expanding those programs, to then going to work for San Francisco then District Attorney Kamala Harris and creating and launching and running one of the nation's most lauded re-entry efforts. I'm ready to go. I've been deeply supported by folks in this community to do the right thing, to lead, and I have long since been an admirer of the work of Congressman Barbara Lee. And when she announced that she was going to take that leap, her own dream to represent us in the United States Senate, it was my time. It was my time to announce and to run a campaign, and I'm going to run, and I'm going to win, and I'm going to govern in the ways in which we've been taught in the Bay Area to fight for justice and to fight for what's right. I'm ready to go.
You talked about a lot of your professional accomplishments. You've also been shaped by many personal experiences that have brought you to where you are today. As a young woman, you were arrested for shoplifting. You were inside the criminal justice system yourself. You were a teenage mother. Sadly, your husband passed away in 2014, and you are legally blind. There are a lot of threads there. How do they all come together to shape who you are inside?
The shaping of me is very similar to what most young people in the Bay Area have seen and have witnessed. We live in a vibrant community. It is extremely diverse. And yeah, when I was in middle and high school, I got in a little trouble. Thank goodness the Bay Area is what it is, and I was shaped and groomed by community programs that taught me how to fight for what was right, taught me how to challenge power, taught me how to be a mentor to other young women who were facing very similar challenges. I had a baby when I was young. I was a teen mom. And with Amina on my hip, by the way, Priya, she's graduating from law school in 3 months.
Congratulations.
I'm so excited. I've worked as not only a young mother, but as an organizational leader and as a strategist, as someone who went to college a little late, who recently graduated from grad school myself, with the premise and the promise that everything that I have been through, I owe it to folks in community, not only to give it back, but to advocate so that their material conditions will be better based on my commitment to fight for them. So losing my husband, the love of my life, to cancer, being by his bedside day in and day out, watching him fight for breath, coming out, even having good insurance. After he passed away, I was in crippling debt. I filed bankruptcy. I had to pick myself back up, and community surrounded me in doing so. And again, not only telling the story, but making sure that I'm an ally for other folks who are going through indescribable pain. What is needed? And I got it. I got community support, people literally putting rent money under my door to make sure that me and my daughters had a place to live and my big girl could go to college. This is the American dream, that we will fall down, we will get back up, but what is required is a strong safety net. That's why I'm running. That is why I'm running. I've watched Congresswoman Lee tell these same stories and turn those stories into good policy and law and bring back resources to our district. I owe our community, but I also owe my mentor, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, to step up and to do what's right and to defend the American people and the people of the Bay Area, our stories, our wants, our hopes, and our dreams in the halls of Congress.
You've seen that leadership from Congressmember Barbara Lee. Yes. Another mentor of yours is Vice President Kamala Harris. Yes. And you worked for her, as you mentioned, very early in your career while she was still district attorney here on a reentry program, let's end recidivism That's program. Right. You saw her today Yes. on the tarmac Yes. at SFO. Yes. She's in town for a little while. Tell us about your relationship with her and perhaps some advice that she has given you that's really stuck with you over the years.
A lot of learning from now our vice president. When I was a young woman and the head of the Young Women's Freedom Center, an organization working to end the trafficking of young women who were involved in the street economies and the sex industry, she was a deputy city attorney working for Louise Winnie at the time, called me out of the blue and said, I'm developing a task force because on the streets of San Francisco, the police are arresting and charging girls who are being raped and trafficked. And I was like, this is what I do. And she said, I'm developing a task force. Can you bring some young women to this first meeting? It'll be in City Hall. Don't worry. I'll take care of you all. She developed that task force, and over the coming 2 years, she was victorious and ended the practice of arresting and charging girls who were being trafficked in San Francisco, instead providing sort of a victim and survivor model. This was before her run for district attorney. She became a mentor, a deep mentor to me. The biggest lesson that I've learned from our vice president, she said, as a black woman, you must come to work early and leave late. You must be excellent. You must admit when you're wrong. You study longer. You read everything. The first day that I worked for her, I came to run her reentry programs because in my own program that I ran, we reduced recidivism amongst the young women by 90%. She wanted to replicate that model in her office. But I came with jeans on and a sweat jacket. And she sent me home that day. And she said, if you're going to work for the people, the good people of San Francisco, if you're going to go to the Fillmore, if you're going to go to Hunters Point, if you're going to go to Sunnydale, and you're going to convince those young people to join what we're going to do to change this criminal justice system, you show up. You show up with deep, deep respect. She sent me home and told me to come back the next day with a suit. But it is that kind of excellence.
Did you have a suit?
No. I wore what I had the next day. It was a little button up and some slacks, ill-fitting. And I'm glad you asked the question because she had a bag for me. And she had a suit. I got to tell you, that suit was too small. Kamala's teeny. But she said, the people deserve you to come in and as your best. And I worked for her for 5 years. And our program became a model across the nation for district attorneys who wanted to do something different instead of just throwing young people away, but actually address the root cause of the issue and support those young people from getting out of the system. But I can't tell you from, again, Congresswoman Lee, Vice President Harris, and others, I've been mentored by some of the most amazing women in public service.
They've also faced a lot of opposition over the years, and some of that they attribute to the color of their skin.
Absolutely.
Do you find that as a woman in elected office, as a Black woman, do you find that there are hidden obstacles?
Of course. Of course. And, you know, again, VP Harris told me, learn how to eat no for breakfast. Show up early, leave late, and understand that people may not perceive you or want you to be in a position of leadership. But again, knowing what we're there for, knowing what my assignment is every morning that I wake up, it's to serve, it's to push boundaries, is not only to be a voice, but to get something done. I've learned that from the best. And oftentimes we don't get fair coverage. Oftentimes we're not expected to finish the job, but watching and learning. I know that that is my responsibility to finish the job, whatever it is. When I was the president of Bay Area Rapid Transit's board during COVID, and 2 months into my presidency, we learned that after the closure of the Bay Area and of the nation, of the world, that transit would be in trouble.
All right, well, let's talk about some issues that BART still faces here, right? Yeah. Because BART is still facing trouble. They're facing financial difficulties like transit agencies are in many, many places. But there are also serious concerns that BART isn't using its money wisely. And this week, State Senator Steve Glazier stepped down from a Senate committee that was tasked with advocating for more transit funding for Bay Area transit agencies. And he said, quote, "What concerns me is fraud. It's the conflict of interest. Just a few weeks ago, the Office of Inspector General pointed out that BART set aside $350,000 to deal with the issue of homelessness, and they've only helped one person. And your fellow BART board member, Deborah Allen, says BART needs reform and not more money. She said we need to fundamentally transform the way BART operates. Instead, the majority of BART board directors, unions, and executive staff continue to focus on the more money please approach that will only produce more of the same failed policies we see now." You have advocated in the past for police reform at BART. What are you advocating for now?
Absolutely. As someone who is transit dependent, why I ran and why I won for my seat in 2 elections, I think the most one, we keep the trains running. One, we make sure the system is equitable. And as a board member, I've been the head of our finance committee. I've deeply supported oversight. It is extremely important that we use the dollars that we get in a way that furthers, again, the opportunity for folks to use transit. No one on our board is oppositional to oversight. What's important now is that we make sure that our state actors and our federal actors with BART, but also the 26 providers in the Bay Area, have what we need to be able to continue to move forward. Folks who aren't transit dependent, they have a lot to say about BART. They have a lot to say about Muni and other transit providers. My job is to keep us moving. And at the same time ensure that we are providing clear oversight and accountability for the monies that do come in. This is a system that operates in 5 counties, that uses rail, that has almost 4,000 employees. Every decision we make should be about, again, fiscal austerity. We need to make sure that we're doing the right thing. But my job will forever be, as a transit-dependent person, to put transit justice, equity, and access at the center of the conversation.
Lateefah Simon, thank you for coming in today as you launch your campaign for Congress.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a home for emerging women-led projects since 1979. The San Francisco Women's Building is covered in a vibrant mural celebrating the accomplishments of female leaders. As one of the first women-owned and operated community centers in the country, more than 170 organizations trace their roots to within its walls. This week's Something Beautiful is the San Francisco Women's Building, a beacon of empowerment in the heart of the Mission District. That is the end of our show for tonight. We will see you right back here next week when we sit down with the California Environmental Protection Agency Secretary, Yana Garcia, about her new role. If you'd like to share your comments or questions for Secretary Garcia, you can email us at knr@kqed.org. You can also find KQED Newsroom online or on Twitter. And you can reach me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Priya D. Clemens. Thank you for joining us. Have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here next Friday night.